Hello, everybody. Welcome to Accost the Field and our post-game Facebook Live dual cast. Tony Gerdeman here with Tom Orr, as always, following Ohio State's 30-14 win over Minnesota. Close, just as we said it would be. We said it would be a struggle. I know a lot of you thought it would be ugly and a blowout, and we're expecting to see younger players. We told you before the game, probably, not to expect that, and to expect a slugfest where Dwayne Haskins would have to play all 60 minutes. And of course, that's all a lie, because this should have never happened, but it did, and it's college football, and that's the way things are in this sport. But Tom, it should have never happened.
Yeah, I mean, if you're at home facing a team that's 111th or 115th or whatever they were in offense coming into the game, and you have the kinds of aspirations that Ohio State has for this season. I mean, college football, win the Big Ten, college football playoff, national championship contender kind of aspirations. You should not be getting outgained by half a yard of play. You should not be giving up more and more explosive plays. You should not be struggling to run the ball the way they did. I mean, they're 7-0, and I don't know that, that there are any more answers to the questions than we had after the Oregon State game.
The answers aren't good, because they didn't give up as many big plays this week, but they still give up sustained drives, which I think against an offense with a freshman quarterback and freshman offensive lineman and an unproven freshman running back who set a career high in the first half, that's even worse than giving up big plays, because big plays, that maybe it's a systemic thing. That's your defense as a whole. That's your play calling, whatever. But when you're giving up 11-play drive, 75 yards, 9-play drive, 75 yards, you're getting beaten up front. You're getting beaten in the intermediate. You're getting beaten in the secondary. The answers that we're getting are very concerning, because they're not good answers. They're bad answers. And at this point, there don't appear to be good answers other than we need to execute. But even if they execute, I'm not sure that the defensive system they're employing is going to work, because there are areas of the field that are entirely vacated. And it can't be just because of one false step. You can't go this way and then, there's 20 yards free. It's impossible. And it can't just be personnel.
Yeah, I mean, the coaches the last couple of weeks have kind of said, we have to do a better job coaching, so they execute better and that kind of stuff. And it doesn't seem like it's getting better. I mean, again, there's a bunch of happy talk after the game about, in the second half, we shut them out in the second half and made some adjustments at halftime, and also that, hey, we're playing without Nick Bosa, without Jonathan Cooper, without Malik Harrison. I mean, you're down guys, which, yes, a lot of teams are down guys right now. Ohio State being down a couple defensive end and a linebacker should not cause them to give up 7 yards of play to a team that had 3 yards of play against Maryland.
Minnesota was down guys too.
Yes.
So, losing Nick Bosa and all of that is real, but when you look at not giving up a point in the second half, Ohio State is pretty fortunate at this point to have gotten out of here with such an easy win. 2 turnovers, Minnesota turned it over twice in the red zone, those 2 interceptions, but 2 missed field goals. Mm-hmm. So you're talking 20 points right there, possibly, and they won by 16?
They won by 16, yeah.
So Minnesota, in theory, almost did enough. And, that doesn't matter, but almost having enough done to you when you're Ohio State against Minnesota is concerning. And these are throws that Accost didn't have to make, because they were moving the ball well enough without taking a shot like that. So I wonder what would have happened if they would have just been comfortable doing the Tom, I don't know if you noticed, but there were a couple of slant pass completions. Did you see those?
Yeah, one or two times they get hit for a slant. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen that before in football. And so I'm sure Ohio State had never either. So, I could, the couple of times that they got hit with those, I can understand that.
Yeah, I mean, any kind of a revolutionary trick play like a slant, Pete Werner talked about that a little bit after the game, the linebacker. Said a lot of that was just off of RPOs, where the linebacker is basically put in a position where there's not a good choice.
Impossible.
If you go attack the running back, they throw the slant. If you sit back, they hand it off to the running back. And, I mean, other teams run RPOs, and not everyone is getting 7 yards per play with the 111th offense in the country against what's supposed to be a national championship caliber defense. So, yes, you are kind of put into a win situation there, but this is a coaching staff that's paid quite handsomely to have an answer to that question, and it seems like a month and a half in, there are no answers.
Yeah, the RPO stuff, it's a lot like the when JT would run the read option, you'd have to pick your poison, which would you want? And defenses would be like, we'd rather have JT Barrett carry the ball, so we're going to gear up to stop the running back. And I almost feel like you need to do the opposite here. Like, worry about the pass first. And I know that goes against all coaching, tenets. But we've seen what happens when they play the run and then the quarterback just throws the ball behind them. Now, they did play it much better in the fourth quarter. They had 2 or 3 knockdowns, at least 2 or 3 knockdowns. And I know one of the linebackers at one point got sucked in, and maybe it was Justin Hilliard, and then was able to back up just a little bit to get a hand up on a play that would have gotten sizable yards. I just don't know why they can't do it in the first half.
Yeah, I mean, again, Justin Hilliard, I think, was the guy who, after the game, said basically, we came in looking for them to be doing one thing and they did something else. And then apparently it takes 30 minutes of football to get that fixed. You can't adjust to whatever they're doing in the first. I mean, this is not a revolutionary idea that, hey, teams are probably going to try something a little different than they have done. You're not going to see just exactly what you've seen on film. This is not a new thing. So, and this is not the first week we've heard that from players either.
It's not even the first year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand. I mean, this is something that it's almost remarkable how much there are no answers right now. That it's not, okay, well, we know what the issue is. It's kind of the same sort of vague, we've got to execute better. Yeah, they did some stuff we weren't anticipating. Yeah, we have to adjust quicker. But, hey, it was better in the second half. I mean, you're going to play teams starting next Saturday that are a heck of a lot better than Minnesota. And if you gave up 7 yards of play to Minnesota, what on earth is Rondale Moore going to do next week?
Yeah, it reminds me of any boss that comes into a job and they want you to do more with less, and they'll cut staff and you have to do this and this and this and you have to do this person's job, and it's like you can't physically do all of these things, and then the response is, well, do it better. You still have to do it, and that's sort of what I feel like with this defense. You can call it execution, but like I said, there's such wide gaps in the defense that even if they are executing it, I still don't think they're going to stop everything that is succeeding against them. And even as we just talked in the first 8 minutes of the show is about the defense, Tom, the most concerning thing for me, this entire team, is the inability to run the football. And I don't care about 500 yards. Urban Meyer said it after the game. Eventually, it will catch up with you, and it will catch up with them sooner rather than later if they aren't able to just simply get 6 yards, get 8 yards, get 15 yards. They averaged under 3 yards a carry today. The long carry was
12. Mike Weber.
And J.K. Dobbins had a 10-yard carry, which might have been his longest carry in weeks.
Yeah.
Say what you want about the defense. At least they bounced back in the second half. There is no bouncing back. We might get one good drive out of this running game, and I say we, I mean like the general we watching it. Mike Weber did well at the end, running on that last drive, but this is the most concerning thing for me, the running game by far. If they don't get this fixed, it doesn't matter what the defense does at all.
Right. It's, this is, again, something that you've kind of heard the same chorus of, okay, well, they were lining up to stop the run, and, they're loaded up and trying to stop the run, and that's why we're able to pass. And, I mean, that's fine. That probably is true to some degree, but I mean, you would think Ohio State probably loaded up to stop the run at some point facing a true freshman quarterback, and they gave up 5.4 yards per play on the ground, and Minnesota, who has far, far, far lesser talent. I mean, outside of Carter Coughlin, I don't know if there's anyone in that Minnesota defense that Ohio State recruited. Mm-hmm. And they get 2.9 yards per carry. and this is not the first week this has happened, this is not the second week this has happened, there are major issues on that offensive line, and that was true even before Thayer Munford went down. Thayer Munford was hurt today. Urban Meyer said after the game, it looked like he got his kind of ankle rolled up, and I think he had a little bit of a hip issue, but he basically said, yeah, he'll be fine. So, I assume you'll probably see him next week at Purdue, and if not, you'll certainly see him for Nebraska. But you've got Munford, you've got Pridgeon, Michael Jordan. Isaiah Prince did not have a good game today at all. Well, Isaiah Prince had a bad game today, and there are, at some point you have to be an Ohio State offensive lineman, you have to be able to line up and just blow people off the ball. You're not playing. This is not Alabama where you're playing defensive linemen that are just immensely talented, and it's like, well, what are you going to do? It's Alabama. This is Minnesota. Other teams are running the ball against Minnesota.
Maryland, 300 yards.
Yeah, do you think Minnesota didn't think to try and stop the run against Maryland? I would think that they probably were aware that Maryland wanted to run the ball a little bit.
That's why they lost. They tried to stop Maryland's passing game. With Kasim Hill and Tyrell Pigrome. Yes.
Yeah, I am absolutely flabbergasted at how few answers there seem to be right now.
Well, and Kevin Wilson after the game said the offensive line, it's about mentality right now. And Urban was asked, do you worry when you become a passing team that they won't be able to switch back to a running team? And that goes to what Kevin Wilson was saying about you've got to it's not physicality, or they just need to sort of assert themselves. And we've seen past offensive lines do that, and they get better every year. They continue to grow. This one, just like the defense, the offensive line is getting worse. The defensive line is just, treading water, but getting out into the deeper end of the pool. Mm-hmm. I asked Kevin Wilson, at what point do you start looking at personnel changes? And it's like, no, there's no personnel changes needed, nothing coming. We like everybody we have. Everybody's athletic enough to do what they're doing. But they just need to do it. And that's what's Greg Schiano. The players just need to execute. This player just needs to execute. This player just needs to execute. And at some point, if they can't execute, then do you 10-2 is okay.
Right. You either have to find someone who can execute, if there's someone else on the team who can execute, or you as a coach have to get the player who is the most qualified to execute. That's what your job. That's your job. That's what you're here for. And I'm sure that there's a little bit of resentment, probably that this team is 7-0, and why is everyone just extremely unhappy with it? But this is you want that big paycheck. You want the you want the nice office and the Woody Hayes. That's beating Minnesota by 16 points is not, and beating Indiana last week close again. It isn't. This team has not looked remotely like a national championship caliber offense, really, for a whole game since the Tulane game. And Tulane is terrible. Yeah. So it's amazing that you can have back-to-back 400-yard passing games in a row. Something that has happened once before last Saturday. This had happened once in Ohio State football history, 1890 through last Saturday. It happened once. Now it's happened twice in 7 days, and everything else, that looks good. Drew Chrisman, the punter, looks great. Blake Hallbill looked good today, kicking field goals. You may have solved your field goal kicking issue accidentally. Sean Nurnberger had, I think they just said a strain.
Yeah. Didn't say what.
Didn't say what. Some kind of a strain.
Right. I think you said Ebola, possibly.
Yes. Cause some kind of a strain of a virus. We don't know. We'd be reckless to speculate.
But he was not on the field, so I wouldn't. If that kid's got Ebola, he should not be out there.
Do we want to go through a couple?
Yeah, let's
go through a couple quick
before we start talking
questions.
About the good parts of the offense.
Well, we just talked about the passing. Was there something else that I
forgot?
Well,
we could talk. We didn't even mention KJ Hill.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But as far as Kevin Wilson, he was asked, you just put up another 500 yards, and yet people are criticizing you, and his answer was, "That's college football," and that's college football. But yeah, KJ Hill, 9 catches, 187 yards, 2 touchdowns. Had the one-handed grab, which I like the fact that Dwayne Haskins said he was kind of mad about it because KJ didn't get his head turned around quick enough, and that's supposed to be, he's supposed to be ready for that and just catch it with two hands like a normal human being. But instead, he got his head around late and, whatever, and just stabs the football. Just a really good game, career game for him. That's how many times have we said that this year? A career game for a receiver. I think maybe Austin Mack is the only guy who hasn't had a career game, and I think he had like an 86-yard game, which was the most in his career. Mm-hmm. So everybody has had a career game so far.
And that's, you want to talk about a unit that has really shown a major, major improvement this year. It's the wide receivers. 187 yards, 9 catches, 2 touchdowns for KJ Hill. Last week it was Paris Campbell with 160 or 170 yards. There was the Terry McLaurin game where he had a couple touchdowns. Johnny Dixon's had a bunch of long touchdowns. You don't know. Ben Victor had that huge play at Penn State. Austin Mack had a couple of huge plays against TCU. There are legitimately 6 receivers there that are making huge, huge impacts, which, it is really too bad that Zach Smith left the same offseason that J.T. Barrett left. Because you don't know, was it J.T. Barrett or was it Zach Smith? Because that was kind of the parlor game with Ohio State fans. What's the cause? And, you want to do it as a scientific experiment and change one variable at a time. Well, they both changed. And so it was definitely one of them, but we don't know which one.
It's almost as frustrating as never getting to see Ted Ginn run the 40.
That's true.
That was the worst thing about the national championship loss was we didn't get to see Ted Ginn, do the combine. But at 26 catches for the wide receivers, and I go back, 9 catches for KJ. 2011, the leading receivers had 14 catches, and we've come so far from that time. But yet here we are, just railing on an offense that's not going to win a national title. Tom, do you think it's good enough to win a Big Ten title?
I think that's a successful season here.
Yeah, I
agree. We talked about that last year with Ohio State won the Big Ten, went out and beat USC in a bowl game. That is what successful Ohio State season looked like until basically 1998 when the BCS came in. I think if Ohio State beats Michigan, Ohio State wins the Big Ten. You go win your New Year's bowl game, whatever it is. If they go to the Rose Bowl, win the Rose Bowl, go play Washington in the Rose Bowl, go beat Washington in the Rose Bowl, that would be a successful season. I think that you have to wonder if this team gets into the college football playoff. Is that a real bad thing? Because this does not look like a team that will fare well as the number 4 seed against Alabama this year.
Yeah, and you've got the 2 schools of people where, yes, it's always good to get in the playoffs even if you get 31-0, versus I'd rather win the Cotton Bowl against USC than get 31-0 or 42-14. So I don't know, but did you answer me? Is this team right now good enough to win the Big Ten?
Yeah, they're good enough to win the Big Ten. I think there's a decent chance they lose somewhere between now and the Big Ten championship game, but
they'll always be in control of their own destiny.
Very likely, as long as that loss is not Michigan. Yeah. If they lose to Purdue next week, but they finish 11-1, they're going to the Big Ten championship game. You're going to play Wisconsin or Iowa or whoever it is, and there's a decent. I think they certainly are good enough to win the Big Ten. But the difference between beating Wisconsin or Iowa and beating Alabama this year is, if true freshman walk-on. What's his name? Anistad.
Don't say it.
Yeah, there's a gentleman from Hawaii who's pretty good at slinging the
football.
You know
what? The last time Ohio State defense played a guy from Hawaii, they did just fine. I'm sure all Hawaiian quarterbacks are the exact same.
Probably, almost certainly. Brad
says, is that insensitive on my part?
I'm gonna punt on that one. Hashtag B1G, we're going to punt. Brad says, this team looks like the Cooper teams that plateaued, and while other teams improve, we stay the same. At some point you lose.
Those teams could run, though.
Yeah. I guess, I don't know if they've plateaued. Those teams started at a remarkable level and just kind of petered off a little bit. And you've kind of seen that this year, but it's probably too soon to completely write them off. There's still another, 5 games and another month of the season. It'll be interesting to see what they look like off the bye week with everyone a little bit rested, get everyone healthy, get Nick Bosa back. I think at this point, let's see what they look like against Purdue next week. Let's, if they get through the Purdue game unbeaten, you get a week to kind of reset everything, potentially get Bosa back, maybe get something figured out, on the offensive line, maybe get something figured out on the defensive backfield, maybe, and then you see what happens in November. But overall, if you said 11-1 regular season with a win over Michigan, and they go to the Big Ten championship game, not even guarantee you a win over the Big Ten championship game, would you take would most Ohio State fans take right now 11-1 with a win over Michigan and then see what happens in the Big Ten championship game?
Most, yes. Most on the internet, most watching us. I don't know, because that's also a more maybe passionate or critical, and not critical in a bad way, but like critical in or maybe a more demanding fan base.
I like the idea of the Ohio State fans not on the internet, who are all apparently 90 years old and still think of the trip to the Rose Bowl as a successful season.
They're watching this on their rotary phones.
Exactly. LT Ironman Tran says JK Spiderhand Hill. That was a pretty good catch. We touched on that earlier. Michael Citro. I'm a bit fuzzy on statistics. What is the statistical chance of Dwayne Haskins having 2 400-yard games now, as opposed to 0 400-yard passing games? I don't know. Gerd tore up his stats book, so he can't answer that. He can't answer that question.
We can eventually get back around to that, but let's continue with the questions.
Brad says, "How worried are you about Purdue now after seeing how flawed Ohio State is?"
I said when we were walking back on the field, there was at some point in this game where I'm thinking, Purdue's going to beat them because they can run the ball. Like I think other people were like Rondale Moore is going to have like 300 yards receiving, and I said, yeah, and 200 yards rushing. He's a dangerous guy in the slot. They're going to be doing all kinds of these crazy plays, these crazy slant passes that nobody has ever heard of. But they're also, this is Jeff Brom. He's going to pull some tricks out as well. And we saw, a trick play here, right?
The reverse flea flicker for 41 yards.
Yeah, and there's going to be more of that because there's no reason to play conservatively unless they're in the game the entire way. And then, but then maybe that's when you do it for that extra boost. Just be prepared for some shenanigans next week.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that from PJ Fleck today. They were in the game, and he got real conservative in that second half.
Kicking a field goal.
Kicked 2 field goals on 4th and 6, in plus territory. 1 down 6, 1 down 9. I mean, that's... If you want to pull an upset, you gotta go for it. You're averaging 7 yards a play all day on this defense.
One of those was like 48 yards that was never going to get there with the wind.
Yeah. That was. There were a couple times that you got to go for it.
They helped Ohio State there.
Yeah,
just like they helped them with the interceptions.
Yep. Yeah, that was for sure a
helpful Gophers.
Helpful Gophers. They are always digging holes and kicking field goals they shouldn't kick.
Any other questions?
No, we're caught up on questions. I mean, if you guys have thoughts on that, feel free to let us know in the comments. I mean, would you take an 11-1 and win over Michigan and then see what happens? You're guaranteed 11-1 and win over Michigan, but they're going to lose once in the next month. Would you take that as an Ohio State fan? Because I think there's an ever-increasing number of people who probably would.
You know what? Watching this, I think they'd be crazy not to at this point. Because 11-1, when I'm seeing an offense that can't run the ball, has trouble stopping it, then don't even get started about the pass, and has trouble with that. 11-1 at this point, I don't want to say it's a ceiling because it's still the Big Ten and they're better than everybody they play. But I think it's an acceptable roof, if that's a thing. I don't know. Michael Jordan, I don't understand. Speaking of Michael Jordan, I'm wondering if it's time to move him back to left guard. But Brady Taylor's not ready, and maybe Josh Myers is not ready. But if Brady Taylor comes back, I think that could help. And Brandon Bowen is close. Maybe he. That doesn't really impact because you're not going to move Demetrius Knox. I don't think. They're not really worried about the tackles. The biggest difference so far to me has been Malcolm Pridgeon, and maybe he's not as mobile as Michael Jordan on the pulling plays, and maybe that's why they can't get into that second level. That's why I wanted to ask Kevin Wilson about that. Maybe we don't see it happening, but if you just keep mentality, at some point you got to do something different.
Right. Yeah. You can't keep saying, oh, well, we just got to do this. We just got to do this better. And it's been a month and it hasn't gotten better. If anything, it's gotten worse. So maybe it's time to try something else. We asked you what you thought on the 11-1 season. Michael Citro says yes, he would take it. Better than a sharp stick in the eye, which is true.
And that is the only alternative.
Yeah. Kim says nope. Spoiled anything but a national championship is a disappointment. That is a disappointing. That's a tough way to go through life.
But that's what Urban Meyer has brought. You reap what you sow yourself, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Mary says, what makes you think Ohio State can beat Michigan the way they're playing? Well, we're not. We're just saying if someone offered that to you, would you take it? I don't think that's. Yeah. I don't think that's necessarily a guarantee by anyone.
We're still working on Purdue, man.
Yeah. Thomas says interception should have been a touchback. That was a weird call.
Yeah.
We were kind of coming downstairs, so I didn't. We sort of saw that in the lobby of the elevators.
No,
ready to come downstairs. I think.
No, that was up here.
Was it?
Yeah, because Isaiah Pryor picked it off and then rolled into the end zone.
Yeah.
Had his foot down at like the 2 or the 1. Usually that's almost always like a touchback.
And your momentum carries you.
Right, and then I was expecting them to maybe even put him at the 1 because that's where he went down. But yeah, it was a good play by him. That was Pete Werner in coverage, so he should have been there because you can't just leave Pete Werner on an island against a receiver. But the throw was in the air for a long time.
Yeah, Alex Grinch talked about that play and said, they really tried not to have the linebackers in man coverage because that was something we saw last week where you'd have the linebackers in man on, an outside receiver and, we were up in the press box going, oh, that's not good. Yeah. That's not what you want. So they tried not to do that. They did it once on that play and Minnesota caught him basically and the receiver got down there, but they had Pryor waiting over the top. So
it would seem easy enough for an offense to gear that situation to happen because Indiana did it repeatedly. Minnesota was able to do it at least once here, and that's where you get into the man-to-man defense and this and that, and we're not going to change our ways. But if you're concerned about getting caught in some things, you can't. I guess you can't always stay steadfast in your ways. And this is our identity, and this is our identity. Right now, what we're seeing out there is your identity.
Yeah.
And it's not great.
Well, yeah, how often have we heard this year we're a press man team, we want to challenge every, at some point, this is like, I remember watching Thad Matta basketball teams, and it's like, well, we're going to play man, 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 and that's not working. I remember a game against West Virginia here. This is probably 10 years ago at this point, but West Virginia is absolutely tearing them up, and it was like, so zone's a thing. You want to give that a shot, because this is very clearly not working.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time to try something else. That's wonderful that your identity is a press man coverage team. Your identity right now is team that's giving up 7 yards a play. They gave up. Yards per completion today, let me just find that number, 16.8 yards per completion to Minnesota. So that's your identity right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't follow football. Is that good? that seems bad. Michael Citro says OSU ran the ball best all day when it had to run to turn the clock. Is the success of the passing game a play calling crutch that keeps the offense from staying with the run long enough to find some rhythm? I'm grasping at straws here.
I think there is some truth to. Does the offensive line let down a little because they know the passing game is good enough to overcome? And that seems really terrible to think that that's even a possibility because as offensive linemen, they're supposed to be the tone setters for the entire offense. And so I would hope that would not be the case, that even subconsciously they're letting up a little bit. But the danger you run when you're a passing team is that the offensive line, and that's where Kevin Wilson was talking about the mentality. You lose that power running, just not drive physically, drive mentally. The game is on us, because when you're pass blocking, it's a little bit, it's different than putting everything on your shoulders. When you're pass blocking, yeah, you got to keep your man off of the quarterback, but it's on the quarterback's shoulders.
Yeah.
End scene.
I'm not sure I have anything to add there.
Tom, you disagree?
No. I mean, it seems ridiculous to think that that's really what it could be. That that it's a mentality thing. It seems like if this was just a mentality thing and not either a scheme thing or a talent thing, then you can fix. I mean, they've had a month to fix a mentality thing. They have sports psychologists and all sorts of assistant coaches around the program that are supposed to be able to be experts in fixing mentality issues. So if it's a mentality issue, then you have an issue with those people. But I think there's probably a hesitance to say. I don't think they want to come out and say, yeah, it's a personnel issue, or we don't have good enough players.
The thing is, if it's a mentality issue, those guys have to go.
Yeah.
I mean, if it wouldn't fit anywhere else, it wouldn't be allowed other places. Yet, and it certainly shouldn't be allowed across the entire 5-man line. So, I don't know. It will be easier to run against Purdue next week, in theory.
Maybe.
But, I mean, this under 100 yards against Minnesota, I wonder when the last time that happened with Ohio State. The 50s? I mean, has it been 60 years, Tom?
That's a good question.
You didn't research that?
I didn't happen to research that on the way up here. Mike Weber, 3.9 yards per carry. J.K. Dobbins, 3.5 yards per carry. And Ibrahim, Minnesota's running back, 6.8 yards per carry. So
he had 23 carries just like they did.
Yeah, that's true. He had 23 carries for 157 yards. Weber and Dobbins had 23 carries for 86 yards.
So almost double.
Almost double.
Long
of 34. When was the last time Ohio State had a rush of 34 yards?
Have they had one this year? No, Weber had one.
Probably TCU.
Weber had one for sure in the Oregon State game, right? Because he went for 186, and there's some long ones in there. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you guys. Just basketball season is almost here. Get excited about that. Luther Muhammad, Chris Holtman really likes him, so.
Climb down off the roof. Ohio State is 7-0, ranked number 3 in the country until the AP poll comes out on Sunday, and then they may be number 4 or number 5.
Top 5 is still pretty good, and the best thing about 7-0 is the opportunity to go
to West Lafayette.
As
the old saying goes.
But you know what? It's September. You kind of set the tone. October, just get through it, and then November, that's when you close. So we're kind of in the October doldrums of, a win is a win is a win is a win. Because November is when everything is going to be determined, and the first game in December, the Big Ten championship game. So nothing has to look all that pretty right now. But that doesn't mean that we should continue to see no acceptable changes, no acceptable improvements, because it's impossible to project out forward and not see bad times ahead.
Yeah, assuming things don't get better, things are going to get worse. How's that for a good deep thing? And you know what? John Leahy makes a great point. Forget basketball. Number 1 hockey team in the nation. They beat Arizona State last night 3-2, 1-0-0 on the season.
Take that, Arizona State hockey school, well known for its winter sports
and being easier to get into than heaven. well, deep cut Simpsons for you.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Tom, do you have anything else to add? Can you add a shining moment or a bright spot to this game that Ohio State actually won today?
Yes, just as a reminder, Ohio State did win. They didn't cover, but they did win by 16 points. They are 7-0 and part of an ever-shrinking number of unbeaten teams in the nation. I do that college football playoff field kind of recap every Sunday, and it's that number gets smaller every week. I think it was 5 or 6 major conference teams last week. Someone probably going to lose again this week. That number keeps getting smaller. I mean, this goes to Brad's question: should the Bucs be fortunate enough to go 12-0? Do they have the ability to right the ship? I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, there is another month. There are coaches and analysts and a whole bunch of very highly recruited, highly touted players in that building at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center.
Remember, the 2014 team had no business winning a national title, and it wasn't just because of Cardale Jones. The defense had issues as well. They were giving up points, and yet everything came together.
Yeah.
So as long as Urban Meyer's on the sideline and the players he recruits are out there as well, yeah, I think they always have a chance. But, you say, the ability to right the ship, you have to do something to right the ship. You can't just keep, floating around and, no, we don't need those oars, we don't need to row the boat. We can just drift. And they can't keep drifting. And, we'll see. Do you think they're going to play better?
I think they're going to play better. I do. I mean, and John makes a good point. Georgia down 16-0 to LSU right now at halftime. I mean,
Joe Burrow.
There is not I think Clemson fans probably right now are saying, "Oh, this team is not ready to be in the college football playoff." Yeah. Georgia down 16 points to LSU. I don't want to spoil this, but that's 100% going to end Georgia 17, LSU 16. Like that's just that when you see 16-0 like that, that's what that means. That's okay. And
Alabama fans are not happy with their team right now either.
Alabama fans are the most miserable people on earth.
I'm just saying.
The only thing on earth that Nick Saban likes is Little Debbie cream pies. That's it. Everything else he hates and is miserable. So
he likes his wife. Miss Terry.
Miss Terry, yes. Okay, Little Debbie and Miss Terry. So two things. Everything else, no, he's miserable. So, and I'm sure we sound a little bit like Nick Saban if you're listening to this and you're a fan of some other team, wondering what's wrong with these Ohio State people that they're not, that they've spent half an hour sounding catatonic about a 30. And
the thing is, they could win 30-29 every single week out, and they're going to be in the playoffs. So just win, and like I said, October, just get through it, and everything will take care of itself. And if you're good enough, you'll win the playoffs. If you're not, you can sure try it again next year, presuming that you haven't embarrassed yourself so badly that the committee will never allow you back in, or they give your spot to UCF.
Mm-hmm. That would actually be kind of fun to see it. I'm probably more. Yeah,
right. Tom, we better end it on that note. As you throw out some more hate to Ohio State. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for watching. And we will talk to you again on Wednesday.